Long before the Scarlery Railway came into existence, there was a smaller plate-laid line from the port of Balladwale to Crosney Curin, which continued up to the hills of Ward Fell. It was owned by the Crovensgate Mining Company and used it to deliver ore from the copper mines at Ward Fell to Balladwale for shipping. At the time, steam locomotives were not very common, and most railways in Britain had yet to have a fleet of them, so most of them, including this one, used pack horses to pull the heavy wagons to and from the mine and port. This little line would be modified 60 years later when the Scarlery Railway was built and its first 2 engines arrived. While the mine at Ward Fell was no different from any other, it did have one particular aspect that made it stand out. Upon one of the mountains stood a large mysterious boulder. No one knows how long it had been there, but it has been believed to have existed long before the mining company was formed. Eventually, the mine closed in 1909 and the line between it and Balladwale was ripped up, as there was no longer any need for the port. The line had also shifted its focus from ore to not only passengers but slate as well. They, along with any other goods, were transported to the mainland via the Sodor and Mainland Railway and later the North Western. Despite the focus change, there was no definite answer to why the copper mine closed. Neither the railwaymen or the 2 engines, Scarlery and Renaeus, talked about it, and soon theories were created regarding the subject. The most popular belief is that it was simply due to a lack of traffic, and indeed, all traffic did reduce at the start of the 20th century. However, that wasn't the main reason. In fact, the truth of the mine's closure was a lot more unusual and more terrifying than anyone could imagine. Ward Fell copper mine remained abandoned for many years, and the boulder stood alone for a long time. That was until one day in the spring of 1972. The Thing controller and Mr. Hugh discovered that the rock from the mountains in the area could be useful for all the railways of Sodor. Soon, a new quarry in Ward Fell was built, and a line was constructed from Crosney Curin. The workmen and miners did notice the boulder, but didn't think much of it. "It's only a big rock, it's not like it's going to attack us or anything," they would say. A few weeks have passed, and Rusty, the little maintenance diesel, was taking a long stone train to the transfer yard at Crovensgate. Donald and Douglas were waiting for him, along with some empty trucks, as well as already loaded vans.
"That's a big load you got there, Rusty,"
Donald commented.
"Where's it all coming from?"
"Why, in the quarry, of course,"
replied Rusty.
"This mountain rock is good for many things. It is a lot of work, but I do appreciate the change. Maintenance and odd jobs is all I've done since coming here."
He paused. The cheerful expression on his face suddenly turned into a frown.
That being said, it is rather dangerous up there.
"Really? How so?"
asked Douglas.
Well, there's this massive boulder on one of the hills. The workmen say there's nothing to worry about, but this may sound strange. I think it's watching me.
Donald let off steam loudly.
"Rubbish! Don't be ridiculous, Rusty! How's that even possible? Boulders don't have eyes!"
Rusty sighed and looked back at the train being unloaded.
That may be, Donald, but there's something strange about this one.
Just then, Henry arrived with his pickup goods. As well as picking up more trucks, he needed to drop some off. Among them was a flatbed, and stood upon it was a bright orange machine that had 2 large drills on its front.
"What's that?"
asked Rusty.
"He's called Thumper. I had to pick him up from Barrow,"
replied Henry.
"I don't know what he is exactly, but apparently it helps collect rock faster. I believe he's here for the new quarry, Rusty."
Soon, Thumper was working hard. His front drills were used to dig rock out from the mountains. Before long, it was coming at a higher rate, and stone trains became longer. The miners were pleased, and so was the Thing Controller. But no one bothered to check the boulder. Stones on the mountain it stood upon began to weaken from the vibration of Thumper's drills. The only one who showed concern of this was Rusty, but when he told the others, Duncan and Sir Handel weren't convinced.
Don't get me wrong, Rusty. I do like you, but I think you're overreacting to all this.
Duncan said.
Indeed.
Chuckled Sir Handel.
All this extra work has gone to your radiator.
You can say all you like, but there's something about Boulder that's not right. Something the Thing Controller isn't paying attention to.
Rusty, do yourself a favor and relax.
Just then, Rusty's driver returned from the staff room.
Come on, Rusty, one more train from the quarry and we're done for today.
He said. Rusty was nervous, but said nothing as he set off up the line. It had started to rain as he went along, and by the time he arrived at the quarry, all the miners had left and all the machinery was covered up. Rusty found the trucks on the siding and buffered up to them. His driver coupled him up and went to talk to the guard in the brake van. Rusty gazed up and shivered as above him stood the boulder. He couldn't take his eyes off it, as he thought he could see something within the rock, staring back at him. His shivering got worse.
Is that a face?
Rusty jumped in shock as a large slab of rock landed on the rails next to him. As the driver threw it away, he looked up, concerned.
We better get going. Hopefully the weather will be better tomorrow. The rain has loosened some of this rock.
Rusty didn't reply. He felt very uneasy. He looked back up at the boulder, and what he thought he saw was a face was now gone. However, this didn't make Rusty feel any better. He then turned his gaze towards the slablet that fell. As the driver entered his cab, he whispered quietly,
I think it's Boulder wanting us to go away.
Without another word, Rusty left the quarry. Rusty didn't sleep well that night, and was exhausted the next morning. Duncan was next to him, and decided to have some fun.
Off to the quarry again, Rusty. Well, in that case, beware of the big scary boulder. Scary boulder indeed. It's as tame as a pet rabbit.
He added as he puffed away. Rheneas was on the other side of the shed, and watched Rusty making his way to the quarry once again. He then noticed Skarloey arranging a train of trucks. He puffed alongside him.
Do you think we should have said something?
He asked, worried.
Considering Rusty's recent behavior, it was a mistake to keep it secret.
Sighed Skarloey.
I didn't believe those stories, but now I'm not so sure.
I'm going up to the quarry this afternoon with some workmen, so I'll tell Rusty everything.
Leave that to me, my friend. I'm going up there now with more equipment for the miners. I would like you to inform the Thing Controller about this. I don't know if he believes in this sort of thing, but he must know regardless.
Rheneas wasn't sure. The Thing Controller had put a lot of work into the new quarry, so he might not be pleased if he had to break it all down. However, for the safety of everyone, it had to be done.
Alright, Skarloey, you have my word.
As Rusty and his driver had hoped, the weather had greatly improved from yesterday, and the sun shone above them. The quarry was now filled with more machines, including Thumper, who was working harder than ever. Rusty was working some distance from all the noise and dust the machines were making, and was actually near the boulder. He soon realised that probably wasn't the best idea. As he began to move away, he noticed something in the corner of his eye. There was a small rock slide on the side of the mountain next to him. None of the machines were close by, so they couldn't be the cause. He then looked up.
Boulder's moving.
Don't be so daft. It can't.
But it could, and it did. It went over the edge and crashed to the ground in front of the little diesel, who felt like a small rat compared to its scale. Rusty began to back away in intense fear, but the boulder seemed to have other ideas.
It's rolling along our line.
Rusty tooted his horn loudly to get the miners' attention. They looked away from their work and were horrified at the sight, but were too far away to be of any help. Rusty hurried down the mountain away from the quarry. Boulder wasn't far behind, as the ground constantly shuddered as if there was an earthquake. Suddenly, just ahead, the driver saw a set of points, with one line being a siding. They reached it just in time, and Boulder thundered by. Rusty was relieved both he and his driver survived, but he knew it wasn't over.
If we heard it crossing Carwin, we can phone the yards and warn them. Let's hope there are no more engines in its path.